So my name is Seyi Akiwowo. I'm the founder and executive director of Glitch. And Glitch is a non-for-profit organisation dedicated to ending online abuse and championing digital citizenship. Glitch is actually my oops baby, a baby that I never planned to have. When I was much younger, 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, I fell in love with politics. I knew that politics was a way of affecting change in my local area. And I went through youth engagement, democracy stuff, such as UK Youth Parliament, Young Mayor, Young Youth Council. And eventually I realised that a lot of decisions were being made by the council, not these youth projects. So I wanted to play with that, the big boys. And so at 22, I was selected, and then 23, I was elected, making me the youngest Black females to be elected as a local councillor. And it was through that whole process where there was a lot of engagement and interest in someone like me standing for local council, which I guess back then the average age of a councillor was 60, white male. I can see why this gorgeous Black woman standing for a council was quite a phenomenon. And then I made a speech at one of the events that I was invited to, the European Parliament, and that speech went viral. And then it was later posted on a neo-Nazi website, and it was the victim and target of horrendous abuse, racist abuse, sexist abuse. And this was across my YouTube channel, Twitter, and a bit of Facebook as well. That's then started a campaign around we must fix the glitch. We must look at the internet and see that it's not fulfilling potential. Somebody that lived on social media. I grew up on MSN. I grew up on MySpace, Meet, Bebo, High Five. I've done a lot, and I felt like the new technology that was emerging around being anonymous and this whole idea of like market ideas wasn't properly being executed, and have people like me, a Black woman, in mind. And so it was about fixing these glitches so that everybody could enjoy the online space. And then Glitch's campaign grew because it wasn't just me that faced online abuse. Women are 27 times more likely to face harassment online than men. And so there was a lot of call from like communities in the UK, but also around the world, saying we need an organisation that is going to hold legislators to account, so policymakers to account for sure, but also tech companies, and think about a way of doing that. And our way of doing that is around digital citizenship, this idea that we have rights as well as responsibilities.
It's such a powerful story that this has come directly from your personal experience, and to be able to have the resilience to actually build a project having gone through all of that it's really amazing. So I think for people in the room, it would be good, if it's okay, to just talk us through what that experience was like, because we know that we're not going to necessarily have a lot of ability to do direct stakeholder research. So if there's anything that you could share about that experience that help people empathize with someone that's going through this, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, like, it's a shout out to you, Charlotte, and like the Feminist Internet team for being up, for wanting to collaborate and partner. And I think that's one of the key things when you're starting a project. Don't try and reinvent the wheel, and try and work with other allies who are working in this space, particularly people who are at the same stage. Like Charlotte and I, very similar in like the early start of what we were trying to do. We were still trying to work out the legal status of what we wanted to do. So try and find organizations and partners that want to work with what you do, and where you can just share intel and share resources. Kind of my biggest tips around like starting this as a project, and now an organization that has like we're a team of 5. So going from being a one-woman band, we evolved and had volunteers come on board with their expertise. So we had comms, we had policy, and we had general like advocacy slash campaigning tactics, like people who had really good networks, and you had to like do really savvy campaigns because we wanted to make as much noise as possible. And then also play to your strengths. So I had a lot of connections with government. I had a lot of connections with policy. My story is very much known internationally, so I used that to try and get people to do intros for me, help with fundraising. So play to your strength. I knew that like my strength was UK MPs back then. I mean, there's a whole raft of new MPs now we have to get to know, but I knew that was my strength, so I built on that. And then have a real clear objective is like super important, because like the internet is a whole world in itself. People don't think it is. People think it's just a few web pages, or if you're like me, like 10 Google Chrome tabs open on the top of your screen. People think that that's just the internet. No, the internet is huge. And so that's huge. And then so is online abuse is huge, because you can break that up into gender-based violence, children, extremism, um, child exploitation. Like there is so much to it. And then even within the gender sphere that we're in, even though we're not a women's rights organization, we have a huge women's program. Violence is huge. Like it's a huge spectrum. Like are you looking at harassment, surveillance, like it's so huge. And therefore you can get overwhelmed. You can feel like you're not doing enough, and you can feel like you're being swayed and pushed left and right. And so being really clear about what your objectives are is super important, and making them as smart as possible. So like really specific, like really measurable, and like breaking down those measures as well. So you have like milestones to hit, like what do you want to achieve in the next 6 weeks? And I know like in the tech sphere, they work very much in like sprints, and that tends to work quite well when you've got like 6 to 8 week sprints. And making sure they're really actionable, and it's something that you can talk about on social media, talk about it with funders, where you can share like what the action has been as a result of your impact, and make sure they're timely as well. And that's quite hard again in the online space, because you at the same time trying to get people to understand the current harms that are taking place, as well as trying to envision and predict and see patterns of future abuse. So like dating apps, and like new forms of catfishing and scamming that's happening on like Skype and Tinder and things like that. And then the intersections with like LGBTQI communities, and how that has meant that a lot of, and I think it's important to acknowledge as well with being LGBT month, that a lot of people who are dating on these apps, particularly trans people, are at huge risk. And we're having to kind of know what we know offline and try and predict that online, and be advocating for that, even though there's no evidence for it just yet, but we just know that's just what happens. And then having to predict as well with stuff like deep fakes. So, people using deep fakes for like cinematography, which is all great. When you're in this sphere, you're already just thinking of all that the risks, and how somebody is going to have that piece of technology and use it for wrong. And last year we were talking about deep fakes, and now society is getting to grips with how dangerous it is of like manipulating people to to fake that they were at an event or at a situation incident when they wasn't. So making sure when you're doing your SMART goals and you're looking at a time, that it's time specific to you achieving what you need to do, but also thinking about what's on the horizon when you're in this kind of tech space. And in the lens of digital citizenship, when you think about rights and responsibilities, it's really about thinking about how do you make sure that your technology, your project, your intervention does no harm. And to know that, you need to understand how different people experience your idea, your project, or your platform. So having conversations and having dialogue with people is really important. Like our workshops that we deliver around digital self-care and digital safety and self-defense feeds into our advocacy work. It feeds into our campaign work. It makes me a better person. Before Glitch, I was a dickhead. And it's literally because of being around people and learning about their experiences and how they would use the platform helps us know how we are tighter in our advocacy approach. So if you're creating anything, really thinking about, okay, I might be a Chinese woman living in London, but how is a Black woman experiencing this? Or how is a visibly Muslim woman experiencing this? And how are you looking at all the other intersections and making sure that your technology doesn't do harm around? Did that answer your question, Charlotte?
spaces, the different technological spaces that that the problem takes place in, like that you almost think of deep fakes as a stakeholder, if you get what I mean. So you're kind of thinking of like that particular technology is the context, and abuse gets shaped by the function of that technology. Super interesting. Can you could you talk people through the different types of online abuse to be aware of?
Yeah, I think that is super important. If Charlotte, would you mind me sharing my screen really quickly?
Please. Yeah, go for it.
She offers, will it work? Start sharing. Yes. Okay, don't judge my various tabs. I told you. It's just loading. But as it's loading, that is a really super important question, because a lot of people mistake or misunderstand or even belittle what online abuse is. And if we're going to make sure that our project or intervention or whatever it is does no harm, we need to know what these harms are and how they translate, right? And so for us at Glitch, online abuse is an umbrella term for different tactics that can be used by different groups. And by different groups, I'm talking individuals. So like us, we might commit some form of abuse intentionally or unintentionally. I'm talking on a kind of technological level as well, but I'm also talking about groups like incels and other extremist groups that exist online. And when we also talk about online abuse, we don't just mean social media platform. It's again, that's why it's so important we keep revisiting this term, because the media and the interest and other people have, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but other people have ulterior motives of why they focus on particular platforms and what they're trying to mask or what they're trying to behind the scenes. So it's really important when we talk about online abuse. We mean emails, we mean SMS, we mean WhatsApp, we mean 4chan, 8chan, anything that requires a connection to the online world, www or Wi-Fi, that is like online technology. And is it going to come up? Right. What we've done here as well recently is we segmented the different tactics of online abuse into 3 themes. I'll present this. The 3 themes that we have is surveillance, is violence, and harassment. So oh, and just now, yeah, can you see it? Phew. Yeah, so surveillance, violence, and harassment. And when you can break this down even more, and there's so many intersects, and a troll isn't going to be like, I'm going to choose hate speech for Seyi Akiwowo. Like, they'll just do whatever they will do to try and send abuse, right? But just in terms of understanding it, this is the way we've broken it down. Surveillance is more around like your data, privacy, consent, tracking you on platforms, stalking. Doxing is where your personal information has been shared online, and people do this intentionally and unintentionally, and people even do it to themselves. Like, people now are trying to show off about buying a new home, and they'll take a photo on Instagram with their keys, yes babe, and then at the back you see their door number and their road sign and like where they live. So just being really mindful about the data and information we put out there, because people can then pull a profile around you and steal your identity. And then you've got violence. So what things that we just say is completely illegal, and like there is no grey area around this. And it's stuff like in real life attacks. Swatting comes from the SWAT team in America, and it's where people would make a fake allegation or report to the SWAT team or the country's equivalent, to say that you have a firearm or you're a terrorist, you're planning a terrorist attack, or you've got a gun or whatever, to get the SWAT team or equivalent to come to your house and raid your home. Then you've got hate speech, and you've got like rape videos as well. So those are real clear forms of violence. And then you've got harassment. Some, for me, I think it's really clear cut. Law needs to catch up on quite a lot of this. But harassment here, you can see you go from dead naming, which affects trans communities, where you use that person's previous name and identity. And again, that is so complicated because as more young people have access to the internet at a younger age, and also transitioning at a younger age, and through the internet, with the internet, which has never happened before, that their digital footprint means that other people can use that against them. Then you've got cyberbullying, you've got gender-based violence and gender-based slurs and harassment. DOS is denial of service, so it's either bombarding your server that provides your website, that hosts your website, bombarding it so that it breaks and crashes, or just trying to get you off your trying to just take your server away from you in the first place, by hacking it. Then you've got cross-platform harassment, which is really important because technology platforms need to speak to each other. So you may be trolled or abused on Twitter, but if you've got the same name on your Instagram and your Facebook and YouTube channel, these trolls will move along these platforms and find you. And then you've got shock and grief trolling, which I think is something that needs to come out more as we see more people talk about suicide and taking their lives, and also women and girls who particularly share their pregnancies online. What to happen is with shock and grief trolling is that people will, if it's a miscarriage, for example, the shock and grief trolling that tends to happen there is telling the woman that it was their fault that they had lost their child, whether that's because it's a lifestyle that person doesn't agree with, or saying that you deserve it. That tends to be the kind of trolling that happens. If you have lost, or one of your family members has gone missing, so like the McCanns, a lot of the trolling that they get is around the insinuation that they had something to do with it, or what we've seen is people making fake Madeleine McCann's accounts, with her being a bit older, and saying, "Mum, it's me, come and find me." So these are, really disgusting stuff. And reason why I make sure I talk.
Connection lost. I think that's the Wi-Fi.
Well, I want to chase.
Shall I just hang up and ask her to call back?
Yeah. Is that sounding okay? Maybe turn this on and off.
I feel the more related to technology a workshop is like the worse the tech breaks.
Yeah.
Missed call. Okay. Is it still hooked up exactly the same?
It should be. I've got frozen things on here, so. But yeah, can you try again? Can you get her to try again? Or if that's not going to work, can you quit Skype and re-Skype me? Oh.
We're back.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry
Is that
about
better?
that. Yeah. Thanks.
I wasn't sure if it was me, so I've also put my phone as a hotspot. So if it's not good, I can go back onto my house Wi-Fi.
Perfect. Thank you.
We just got some good news. We got our charity registration number.
Yay! Congratulations. That's amazing.
I won't cry on this call. I'll cry after.
Don't cry.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. Oh my gosh. So online abuse.
Can you, Shay, before you start, can you turn your camera on?
Oh yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, hello.
You're back.
I won't share the screen just in case if that's also adding to the problem. But with shock and grief trolling, as like disgusting as it is, it's a it's a reminder of the possibilities of what people can use with your creation, your platform. Like, I don't believe that Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and all of these people that were creating these platforms ever thought it was going to come to that. And so that's why it's important that we do raise these tactics, so that when the next generation of people are creating any kind of initiative, or even trying to create anything that is around online safety, or from the other side, it takes into account these different tactics. And with shock and grief trolling, what I find particularly interesting is technology encourages us to share. Like, as soon as you go on Facebook, the first thing you see is what is on your mind. As soon as you go on Twitter, it's encouraging you to tweet something. Like, their profit model is about time spent on the platform, so they want you to be sharing. And sometimes when you share and you don't think about filters, you don't think about your digital self-care, you could be sharing about, like, you're pregnant, or a really private, intimate moment you think is just with your friends, and it can turn really nasty. And so it's about thinking about all possibilities and consequences. So that was just a run through of what we mean by online abuse. So anytime someone says, "Oh, online abuse is just, it's robust debate, it's snowflakes that can't handle the heat and need to get out of the kitchen," you can challenge that by saying, no, like, online abuse is an attack on our democracy. It is silencing women. It disproportionately affects Black women and women of color. It's hijacking and weaponizing our online spaces. The way we view our offline communities is the way we should start viewing our online communities. There's no way we would say to a woman, you can't walk down Oxford Circus or Oxford Street, because, oh, there are workmen there and they're going to catcall you. We would be telling the workmen that is not acceptable behavior. This is not how you conduct yourself in London, right? And that's how we need to be building the language when we talk about online technology and digital citizenship. And when we think about creating anything, we should just think about championing the best behaviors we want to see as well. I think technology doesn't do that enough. Like, technology doesn't do enough to encourage the positive behaviors and the positive uses. And sometimes I think we need more of a carrot and incentivizing as well as a stick.
We're really conscious that people who've been experiencing online abuse and harassment are potentially vulnerable and experiencing a lot of discomfort, and we were wondering if you had any advice or insights that could help the people in this workshop understand those experiences, and if there's anything that they should take into account about what it's actually like.
Yeah, a really important question, Charlotte, because people, alongside belittling online abuse, people can belittle the impact. And I know, because we did that you hosted that panel with me, Asmina, and Travis, and how varied our experiences were, but how emotional, and how the ramifications, and still the ramifications we all live in. And it's really important that what you're doing here as well is that you centered lived experience as part of your creative process and your teaching, which I think is missing in a lot of, like, innovation incubation stuff. And it's really important that we look at lived experience. So when you look at the impact of online abuse, I think you can separate it into human rights violation, democracy, and mental health and well-being. With mental health and well-being, statistics are all showing that there is an increase in negative relationships with social media. It is contested by some people because they talk about the kind of correlation and the causal effect. Like, but for social media, would this person's, they get into their kind of nerdy debate. But generally, it's safe to say that there are more young people citing social media as a reason why they've got anxiety and having panic attacks, and why they don't want to go to school because they're being bullied. There are more teachers who are feeling overwhelmed by having to teach a subject, as well as now do behavioral management offline, and then stuff happening on WhatsApp groups and on Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok coming into their school. So from that, we can see it's a huge problem around mental health and well-being. And Amnesty International's research showed that women who were surveyed all cited experiencing some form of psychological abuse or psychological impact, anxiety, depression. And then you've got people who suffered from PTSD, like online abuse. We talked about the 3 segmentations. Those tactics that come under violence is like any other form of violence. It is going to lead to some form of PTSD. So I go through therapy. I go through regular CBT to manage being online, because I'm on the platform that has caused me to set up glitch, but therefore I'm constantly every day being triggered or being exposed to something that happened to me 3 years ago. That's me being able to manage it. That's being able to push for therapy. There are many other people that don't get to do that or don't have that, and are not in countries like ours that have the NHS to get that, right? So that's really important to note, the mental health and well-being impact. Then you've got the impact on democracy. It is not okay that women, particularly, and women from multi-intersecting identities, are citing online abuse as a reason why they do not want to engage in democracy, or a reason why they're no longer standing in parliament. That is like a stain on our democracy, and something that we should be so embarrassed is happening. And if we're talking about democratic engagement, we're talking about using social media to hold MPs accountable, to engage more and to understand what's happening, and have cool videos and have discussions online. And we're looking at e-democracy. If online abuse is deterring already marginalized communities, then we're only going to get the same echo chamber, the same people having a conversation about democracy, the same people having a conversation about politics, just or happening to be happening online. And I'm really passionate about this, obviously, because my background is in politics, but I'm passionate about this because I do believe in the potential of the internet. The internet was meant to be this conduit of of institution to the people. It was meant to bridge the gap. It was meant to connect people. It was meant to democratize information. And it has, like, we've seen Black Lives Matter, how we know about what's happening in China with the coronavirus, how we know what's happening in Australia with the bushfires, how we know what's happening with Sudan. Like, that is all the democratization of information. How we have politicians like AOC in America standing because she was able to use the online space to get micro donations rather than having to rely on big institutions for donations, and she can retain her independence. Like, it is amazing. But when we have online abuse, when you have incel groups targeting women, when you have racist white supremacy breeding and growing online, um, you are pushing the very people who would benefit from the internet away from it, and it's a huge impact on our democracy. And then the third one was around, or the first one I said was around human rights violation. Like, it's important to be really clear that online abuse, even though it's not technically said as online abuse in acts of human right acts or EU acts, if we still get to if the EU laws still apply to us next year, but they all cite about online hate speech. They all cite about intimidation and fear. They all cite around being free in this world, free to living free of fear and intimidation. They all cite the importance of human rights defenders and women engaging in politics and public life, and that there should be no barriers to that. And online abuse is a direct violation of our human rights on so many levels, from the surveillance and um, data privacy and stalking side to the violence side, as well as the harassment side. And if we're all about gender equality, we're all about trying to get 50-50 representation in parliament, 50-50 representation in in the media, and in the boards and the FTSE 100, etc., etc. We won't achieve that if we don't tackle online abuse, because that is what's putting women off. Women are not wanting to step up and be seen, because as soon as they are, they get hit by how they look. They get hit by if they're married or not, hit if they have children or not, and then comes the whole, if you are a woman of color, or you're visible, have a visible faith, or even if you don't. I know many people who've got Arabic spellings of their name, like Rebecca with a K, that she is not Jewish, but people assume she is, and she receives such disgusting anti-Semitic abuse, and that is going to put off, or that is putting off. So Plan International's research showed that 43% of girls cited, 43% of girls said that they closed down their social media accounts or changed the way they use social media because of the fear of online abuse. and that was girls under the age of 16. So that's the next generation already seeing what Diane Abbott goes through, what Jess Phillips goes through, what Lily Allen's going through. You know, insert Luciana Berger, insert Little Mix, and Jessie from Little Mix. They're seeing all of this and thinking this is not worth. It's not worth it. And then when they are forced out, it just means there's more of your white supremacists, your patriarchy, and your oppressive tactics.
Just one more question from me, and then anyone please store up your questions. Just, have you come across any sort of solutions or people trying to help but sort of making mistakes, like making wrong assumptions about what would be helpful? It would be good to sort of think about any pitfalls, things that you think we should be watching out for, maybe assumptions that have been made before that you think were not helpful or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think having a digital citizenship as well is not a static definition, right? It's not a static identity, because we're not the same citizens now that we were 10 years ago, right? Like it evolves, it's fluid, it has to adapt with change. Like we have to get more progressive, we have to be more inclusive and offline, and so we have to be the same online. And I think having that teachable spirit when you're creating anything is really important, and just being open to reflection is the first thing. Like making sure, like in your cycle of innovation, or in your annual plans, or in your annual strategies, or in your your annual kind of business plans, there's always room for review, always room for like getting focus groups in, testing stuff out, hearing feedback, and being open to feedback as well, even if it is really hard to hear. And then the second tip around like being open to mistakes and growing is something that I learned was around anonymity. So not only can I still not say it after 3 years, but it was around my assumptions that everybody should have their full name on Twitter. No one should be able to hide behind a frog meme or as a display picture. Everyone should know who everyone is. Everyone should be signing up with their passport. Like that's what I used to. And I came from a place of anger and ignorance, right? Like when it happened to me, I'm like, I want to know who these mofos are. But like partnership working and listening to other people, and we have a lot of partners in the global south in where they don't have the same level of democracy and a democratic institution that we do, and therefore citing some of those things as a recommendation would be very, very problematic in those countries. Really open my eyes about how and what you call for, basically your question, and now we don't talk about anonymity as a solution to ending online abuse, because people are very much themselves online and are not being addressed. Katie Hopkins' account has only been suspended for 7 days, and that's taking years and years and years of many civil society groups and activists and campaigners to say her account is hate speech. She's coming back this week. I am dreading it, but she is very much her full government name is on Twitter. We know who she is. Anonymity is not going to solve the problem here. And so that was me being up for saying, you know what, you're right, actually, that this is wrong, and then we can evolve our thinking. So we're due to do our review of our recommendations to tech companies. It's a really good way for us to know like what's been done, like what we need to be pushing for, and then also say that what is no longer what we should be calling for, or who have we missed. I know we need to do a lot more to involve how disabled communities face online abuse and the tactics that are used there, because they're again an invisible community offline, and they're so invisible online as well. So that's part of our journey to involve more people.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Seyi? I've got several more if you don't.
I've got. Oh, someone else?
Is that Connor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
Connor.
Hi. All right. Nice T-shirt.
Wow.
Look at that amazing branding.
That colour's so nice.
Yeah, it's
Got
so
that
good.
colour,
It's so good.
I know. I was just wondering, have you come across like any tools
that are maybe already like in development online, or is there anything online that is already starting to sort of like deal with the topic of online harassment? Have you come across anything or any projects that people have engaged with?
So when you mean tools, you mean what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I guess I say tools because, like, is anyone creating anything that could help those
Right.
experiencing online abuse do something
Yeah.
about it, or yeah?
I mean, yeah, there are loads of people that are testing stuff around capturing abuse and making reports easier and stuff like that. There isn't yet anyone. I mean, and there are people that are trying to offer an alternative to Twitter, an alternative to Facebook, but they do demand slash eat up the market, so that's quite hard. And the tools that I've seen are people who ask my opinion for them, or that I test run or pilot if I think they are really good. They're great, don't get me wrong, they're really great, but they're still dealing with the aftermath. It's not dealing with the symptom in itself. So it's still reactive. So that's why I would say there's a gap in, like, how does Twitter itself deal with this? Like, how does it eat up more of the negative words before it even gets to be put online? I think Instagram is a really good example of daring to break up their model. I mean, they still have they're a business, so they're obviously going to always want to put profit in there as an objective. But Instagram, after Molly took her life online, and Russell, Ian Russell, her dad, campaigned heavily on this. Instagram really took apart its model of likes. It it has, if you comment on something with a word that they've in their kind of algorithm teaching to be offensive or rude, they send you a prompt to check that, do you mean to send this? You very good. Like, so if you report something on Instagram, they will give you an update on it quite quickly, and then they ask you also to give feedback on their feedback, which I think is very well done. There's a clearer reporting mechanism than there is on Twitter and on Facebook. And I think what misses on all of these platforms is the policy. So if you look at their policies of these platforms, it's still very vague. They've only just now got on Twitter, only just now got a dehumanizing language policy, and it still needs a lot of work. They don't have policies around gender-based violence. If you don't have a policy, and you don't have these words, and you don't have these words, you don't even define them, you're kind of screwed. Look how long it took me to kind of define what online abuse is, and define the impact, and define digital citizenship. It's really important to have that really clear, so you have a terms of reference or a terms of engagement you want everyone to work with. But I'd give a shout out also to Block Party. It's set up by Tracy Chow and Asmina, who from Toxic Twitter, the author of Toxic Twitter Report, and was on the Feminist Internet panel a couple of years ago. Their Block Party is basically trying to make your experience of Twitter easier. So the whole filtering and muting of keywords, they want to make that a lot easier for you, and then make the whole review process as well of what you're filtering easier. And I think that's a very good tool, and it is a very, very good tool, but it's still not dealing with the root problems.
Asmina's Skyping in with us tomorrow.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah. So it's such a good point about us trying to be more preemptive rather than, okay, like, how do we detect what's already going on, but dealing with this at a systemic level.
Yeah, and the online harms white paper is this is the first stage of us trying to get a bill here in the UK. So I don't know if you're familiar with the bill cycle, but you go through your green paper, your white paper, first reading, second reading, and all sorts of stuff. So we're still very at early doors, and it's been about a year this has been going on. But the online harms white paper is about that. Charlotte, it's about the systematic change. It's about a duty of care that you're placing on tech companies, and having a regulator to hold them to that standard. and it's about defining what that care looks like. It's about defining what online harms looks like, and for us, obviously, it's through the lens of digital citizenship. You won't believe how many people don't agree with that, and how it's, you know, there's loads of actors to keep happy. There's the children's group, there's the women's lobbyist group, there's a freedom of expression group, there's the tech companies, and the tech have a union association. So it's not easy. It doesn't mean that we should stop trying. And the danger of not having a systematic approach means that you still rely on it being a case by case basis, and it means you rely on having a relative amount of privilege. So I am a Black woman, so I do not have the same privilege as white women or people. But I knew, being a politician at the time, I had a relative amount of privilege to be able to call my MP, tell her what happened, and then she can get on the phone to Google. Not everybody has that level of connection, and I knew that. And Glitch provides that conduit, so people will escalate cases or tag Glitch or tag me, or friends will know me and say, can you help me raise this? And I'm happy to. I feel so guilty about it, Charlotte, because you shouldn't need me to get to Facebook and get to Twitter to do the right thing. Their policy should be like that in the very first place. Like, it shouldn't take having to go to behind the scenes meetings and pushing for certain accounts, Katie Hopkins, to be taken down. It should just be happening anyway. And that's why a systematic approach is really important. Because, you know, what happens when Idris Elba finally notices that I'm this hottie and wants to marry me? I'm out. So who then people contact in Glitch to get support? Like, that's not sustainable. So yeah, systematic approach is really important, and it needs to be international too. So Glitch has been working with the Human Rights Council on updating the legislation around racism and hate speech to include online racism and online hate speech. Again, another faff, but really important to have international framework, because we're dealing with an international business.
Amazing. Did you want to ask a question?
No, sorry.
You sure?
I have to
Oh
work.
no!
It's the only day on
Okay, no worries.
I couldn't take it off.
No worries, no worries.
Pay the rent.
Does anyone have any questions for Seyi?
You're either shy or bored of what I've said. Oh, I like the person's yellow cardigan. I like your cardigan.
It is nice.
Come on, ask me a question. There's no such thing as a silly question. I can pick on people because I can see you.
Oh yeah. Oh my
This
God.
is-
I've got one actually before I go.
Okay.
What do you think about this say that internet or Instagram in particular hates women?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did. This is being recorded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to put my diplomatic language on. I don't think honestly, genuinely, I don't think these tech companies hate anyone. I don't think because hate requires intention. I literally just think they just don't see it. They don't get it.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. I signed an NDA, so we're going to be a bit cryptic here. But I was invited by a search engine called Boogle, and they asked me to come in to help teach their algorithms around racist language. No, sorry, sexist language. Sexist language. So I'm in this meeting. They've flown in this like top guy to come in to Boogle's office in London to talk about how we go about this project. And they kept saying how it worked, demonstrating, you know, it was really cool, it was really fascinating. This is the really, really early stages of Glitch as well. I was thinking, rah. And then I had to say to them, you do realise that I won't just be picking up sexist language, right? And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, well, when the abuse happens, it won't just be, oh, bitch, cunt, da 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 da. It'd be like, you black bitch. It'd be like, I'm black as well. Do you realise that? And he goes, I don't understand. I said, okay, let me try and explain intersectionality to you. This is literally the conversation we were having. And it wasn't hate again it requires intention. It wasn't intentional. It was a massive blind spot, because you can imagine every single day working with everybody that looks like you, thinks like you. It's like group think, right? Like, or group thought they talk about, and the dangers of it. No one's ever challenged that or opened their eyes to that, and so they can't see it. So when that from the top, that is what is like it's like, and that filters down to everything. So content moderation, their policies, their products. So they will put out a product and not see how that could affect women. So, for example, Facebook was known for putting everyone's address. If you had the Facebook Messenger app, or you had Facebook Messenger, like early on, your mobile number, if you gave it to Facebook, was published. A woman would know not to do that. But because the product was designed by the same white middle class men, they had this massive gap. And it's also important to know that these tech companies also live in a bubble. I don't know if anyone's been to Silicon Valley. I've never been. Part of me actually doesn't even want to go, because I think it would freak me the hell out. But I've seen people talk about it. I've seen documentaries about it. It is like a fake London. So they are in a tech bubble within a tech bubble. So they don't, and everyone gets flown in. So cleaners, staff, or whatever, they live nearby and they get a coach or bus to come in. It's like Hollywood. It's like Disneyland. So can you imagine day in and day out only seeing Mickey and Minnie and Donald Duck, and that's all you know, and that's your world? That is how it's like for these guys. I'm not at all condoning their behavior, but having that revelation just helped manage my anger a little bit. It helped me direct how we do our advocacy approach, and why it's so important for us to talk about the intersectional impact that online abuse has. So what you then see is to your question is, constantly women are under attack or being silenced or being censored, whether it's like free the nipples, it's Instagram mummies, or it's shadow banning, or all sorts of. You're thinking, rah, like, as a woman, does this platform hate me? I can see why you think that. And it's like they don't hate you because they don't even see you. They don't think about you. They don't think about us when they're designing these things. They're only starting to get better now because their brand and their reputation is so toxic.
Any more questions? I just
Lily at the back. Yeah, we've got similar hair.
Who's got similar
Yes,
hair?
you.
Wow, you managed to reach through the digital sphere.
Ask me a question, sis. Come on.
How many questions? I'm not gonna lie, I've never really thought about any of this before. Like, I know that's really weird because like I'm a woman on the internet, but like, I'm not gonna lie, I spend most of my time on Pinterest. Like, I don't use my Instagram, so I am literally just like sat here like learning. So what? How? What the hell? So like, I don't really have any questions because I'm like so interested in it. But I'm like so interested that other people ask me questions. So I'm
Mind
like,
blown.
literally.
What do you think? What do you think then that we can do so there isn't that disconnect? Because I'm also conscious that we don't become like a middle class charity. Oh, I can see we're a charity. We don't become a middle class charity that doesn't that uses language and makes assumptions and doesn't do the basic like education, but also not in a patronizing way. How can we get this to be more mainstream so that everyone's getting that revelation that you just got today? Not just to you, anybody. Like, how do we make this more mainstream?
Maybe look at like advertising and branding. I don't know.
Charlotte, can you repeat? I heard branding.
Yeah, she was saying we would need branding, advertising, media channels to promote the issue, right?
Yeah, like if like I'd see things online and be like, oh, okay, this is like something I've like never even thought about before, and like, you know, what, yeah, no, I guess it would be through sort of advertising because I've literally never even thought about any of these issues, which is really weird to myself because I'm so curious. But like,
Yeah, and part of me is like, I don't think it's for us to all become nerds. Like that's not what digital citizenship is about either, right? It's not for all of us to know. Like I am never going to be Charlotte. I am never going to know how to make an AI bot. I could make a bot on Twitter to do like reactive like stuff. To that I can make a troll. I can make I can basically make a bot for good. That's about it. We as citizens shouldn't have to become experts in everything in order to be able to then challenge. We should be able to trust those that are in power, trust those that we elect and pay to do their job, to do this better. So we shouldn't have to become health experts to then know how to save our NHS. We should just expect to know that our NHS is not going to be, drained of funds and on the brink of being sold off to the US. We should be able to trust the powers that be to some extent that they've got our interests at heart. But I do feel like for us to make the systematic change that we were talking about before, Charlotte, we need to triple, quadruple in size. We need mass. I mean, look at environmental crisis and environmental activists, and how much Greta and the other young activists have had to campaign and had to use analogies and have had to like say there's a crisis on our hands and convince people, and they've still not even done. They've done a great job, but they're still not been changed. UK is still not committed to reducing CO2 gases. There's still not been any of those things. But what they successfully did was make it so mainstream now. Before that, they wasn't getting that many people participating in veganery. So being a vegan for January, there wasn't that much conversation about plant-based diets. You wasn't seeing so many celebrities pick up their Oscars, thank their babies and thank their husbands and their wives, and then talk about the environment. That has taken 2 to 3 years of activists really pushing the thought leadership around this and making it mainstream. And even that is still not making that much of an impact. But that's what I think we need to do. I think we need to really think about paying it forward, tripling in size, mobilizing people, thinking about resources that can then mean that there's like a scalable approach. So like I've trained you, you then train another 10 other people, and therefore more people are on side. But otherwise, we're just going to be a small group of the good guys with the bad guys growing.
I think you had a question.
Yes, regarding the way of talking about Instagram, so this whole movement of free the nipple, like I have both sides that I still don't know where to put myself. Like in a way, I would like to see women displayed on their full nudiness online, and in the other way, I'm struggling in the way we're portrayed it. So if Instagram decided to lift this ban of women showing their nipples on this app, like how can we fight this? Because if they lift it and then we have more portraits of women being sexually displayed for the male gaze instead of reappropriating their own sexuality, I don't know, like in a way I want this to happen, but in a way I don't want it to happen. Like I would like to know where you stand on this.
Yeah, I'd really recommend having a look at APC, the Association for Progressive Communication. I really recommend having a look at their 16 principles of a feminist internet. And one of them is around sexual expression and exactly everything that you said, and about it's not just sexual, it's not just free the nipple. First of all, whose nipple you're talking about, because not everyone has beige nipples. So there's a real kind of unpacking of what we mean by that, and also not to do it through male gaze. My thing about the free the nipple thing, I don't think it was about women being free. I don't think it was about women wanting to show their boobs. It was, why can men show their boobs and women can't? And I think that's what for me is the issue. Men can show their six pack and I can see their little milky buttons, but women can't do it. That's the first one. And then the second question is around, how do we have a conversation around sexual oppression, sexual expression and liberation that needs to happen offline still and online? How do we do that in a very conservative country, a very religious induced country that still views women as a type of thing, or women's bodies as a type of thing, right? And then my problem also with that, when we talk about free the nipple and sexual expression, there is no intersection around how Chinese or East Asian communities are fetishized, how Black communities are fetishized as well. So who is driving this agenda around free the nipples? Because when you talk to people who try to decolonize the internet or decolonize feminism, some of them do want to free the nipple, but some of them just say, I just want to be paid for my job. I just want basic civil rights. And sometimes I think the whole free the nipple sexual expression thing is a white feminist agenda. It isn't really what the whole feminist movement want. But have a look at APC's Feminist Internet principles, because a lot of it was also driven from the global south, who are still just trying to make it okay for two women to kiss on their platform without that leading to them being killed, right? This is we're talking about in Kenya and Uganda. Like, that's where we're at. And so I'm a little bit like, free your nipple, two women can't kiss without that facing execution. Not a popular answer, I know.
Any final questions? I just have one more. So I've been thinking a lot about content moderators as a potential stakeholder group that you might be able to help or like design a chatbot for. And so I was wondering if you know much about the experiences of content moderators on Twitter. Like, how could they be supported? Is there a way that they can sort of manage upwards, or is that just unrealistic to expect that they have agency within the company? Is the support that they need just sort of, not just, but is it psychological support? Because I'm conscious that the people that are filtering through all of this shit are getting traumatized as well.
Yeah, I think content moderators is a massive gap for labour rights. And unions could do so much more to look at that sphere. The issue is that content moderators tend to be in countries that don't even have basic labour rights in the first place, which is why, right? Which is why they're there, why they're in those countries. And then when you've got moderators that do speak out, Google will try and tell you that they're not, but they are. You're fired. So look, all those employees that spoke out on you under whistleblowing protection, they were massively penalized for it. So if you put Google fired into Twitter, you see all of those people that are speaking out. And I do really think, Charlotte, it's not just content moderators. I think tech staff, is an untapped market of people that want to do good, who thought they were going in to try and change the system from the inside, have been seriously burned, seriously hurt, seriously seen some real awful crap, and want to join a movement or be part of something to affect that. If we could pay them what they were being paid before, maybe we would be an attractive alternative. So there's the practicalities of it, but I do think it's an untapped market. I think it should be looked at, like you said, their labour rights in terms of, do they get to take regular breaks? Could there be a chatbot that reminds them to take a break every 30 to 45 minutes? Because they're literally got a target of dealing with complaints and reviewing content by the hour. So their eyes are going to be messed up. I think it's also from a policy point of view. So how can they feed into what policy changes need to be made? So if they've seen a particular type of content they need to review all the time, is there a gap? Is there something that needs to be changed systematically again? And then how can they feed into the language of this chat box as well? So so that the chat box is picking up the right intel, the right bits of information. I still think no matter what, you're going to need a human to review certain bits of content because of just how nuanced things are. But I think there is a backlog in content moderating that could be dealt with by AI.
You've been an absolute superstar.
Let me see your face.
I don't know if you can see my face. Might just have to.
Come round.
If you move that camera around.
This is a bit weird. No, I can't. I daren't. I daren't.
I daren't, she said.
I'll selfie myself and send it to you. Oh, hello.
Oh my God, is that how you've been watching me, guys? With my no eyebrows.
It's all good. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Can we please give Shay a round of applause?
Thank you everyone for having me, and yeah, have an amazing week, and thank you for trying to make the internet a better place.
Thank you. You've stood us in very good stead.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.